These are the top lenses, probably give you the best bang for your buck, while making sure you get the best image quality as well. Of the lenses that I have over here with the R10, on this I have here the Tokina 14 to 20 millimeter f2. Then I have here is the Tokina 11 to 16. Now, normally between these two lenses, I would say pick one. You don't necessarily need an ultra wide angle across the board. However, it really comes down to what's the look that you're going for. If you're looking for like that GoPro ultra wide look, then yes, the 11 to 16 would probably be your best option. However, if you want something that gives you a little bit of a brighter aperture, which it does help, especially with a crop sensor camera, then I would advise get the 14 to 20 instead. A 14 to 20 on a full frame equivalent would be something along the lines of maybe a 20-ish to a 30 mil. 20-ish to 30 mil is probably good. The next lens, because now we have the new Sigma 17 to 40 f1.8 is out. The classic 18 to 35 is going to be something that's going to be super cheap and affordable. Well, maybe that's not the appropriate description. Super cheap and so when I bought this at least a few years ago, used off of eBay, and it cost me nearly $600. You could probably get it for a lot less than that now, maybe closer to $400, especially with the release of the new one from Sigma. But this lens here is still like super sharp, and especially with photos and videos that you'll be capturing on the Canon R10. Now, I'll tell you right now, Canon R10 in comparison to Sony cameras like what I'm shooting right now, I'm shooting on the FX30 right now. When it comes to photos, I still prefer the ease of use and the simplicity of using Canon. However, for video, there's still a lot to be desired, especially at this price bracket. That's why my go-to typically for video is something like an FX30. But the good thing is, all of these lenses, or most of these lenses that I'm talking about here, with the appropriate adapter, could also be used across the board with Sony or Lumix cameras. So, except for the 14 to 20, although you could use it on a Sony camera, you're not going to get reliable autofocus regardless of what adapter you use. Whether you're using a Tokina adapter, Sigma MC21 or MC11 actually on the Sony. Doesn't matter if you're using MC11 or if you're using the 7 Artisans adapter. With the 14 to 20 millimeter f2 zoom lens from Tokina, you're not going to get reliable autofocus on Sony systems. However, when you adapt it to the Canon RF mount or the Lumix L mount, the autofocus works just fine. But if you're looking for a set of lenses that you can get that would allow you to use across the board with the appropriate adapters, Sigma 18 to 35 mil, the Sigma MC11, which I've got already mounted on here right now, then it'll give you reliable autofocus on Sony, MC21, I believe, on the Lumix, and just any EF to RF mount adapter on the Canon RF will work just fine. Now, the good thing about the 11 to 16 or even the 11 to 20, in fact, I would say if you have the option to skip the 11 to 16 and jump to the newer 11 to 20, not necessarily because of the greater image quality, although image quality will be great, it's good on this too, but because of the fact that you have the extra reach. And so I've always wished that from 11 to 16, I always wished I could punch in a little bit more. Whereas on the 14 to 20, I feel like I'm at the appropriate focal length that I would like, and that's just my preference. Now, outside of these two, you would want yourself a compact lens. Now, typically, if you had to pick one, I would say get the classic nifty 50 fantastic plastic Canon 50 millimeter f1.8. This particular lens is something that is extra super reliable. It's great image quality, and it's a must-have. In fact, get 2 of them, and if you can. But I would also recommend, if your budget-friendly budget that would allow for it is consider a pancake lens. Now, in my hands, this specifically is the 40 mil f2.8. Uh, on the Canon RF mount, if you have a full frame camera, get the 40. But if you're running on crop sensor, get the 24 mil f2.8 pancake. It's literally the same exact size. If I were to just simply take off the step up, this is literally it. Now, if I had to, now the reason I'm suggesting get the EF mount lens over any of the RF mount lenses is because if you're not marrying or committing to the system itself, then this will allow you to move from one system to another. Having a good set of EF lenses gives you that flexibility. And especially if you're in a budget situation, you're budget conscious, you're still learning, then you want to have the flexibility of figuring out what you want. And basically these lenses will cover, I would say, probably 80% of any and all photo video needs that you might have when you're first starting out. So the 50 mil f1.8 gives you a very portrait friendly look. It's closer to like an 85 mil on full frame, whereas the 18 to 35 is basically a standard zoom lens, and the 11 to 20, in this case I'm holding 11 to 16, but my recommendation is get the 11 to 20. But if you want something that's brighter, 14 to 20, which is what's right here, and I think that'll set you up real good. And at the same time, if you want something that's super small and pancakey, just to kind of give you an idea. So this is the 14 to 20. I have an Insta360 RS just mounted right on the body of the lens, as you can see here. This allows me to basically take the gyro data off the camera and then essentially record, stabilize the footage digitally using gyrophone. But let's say I were to take all this off and I want to make this into a compact, baggable, I wouldn't say pocketable, but baggable setup. Simply take off the lens and say I want to put the pancake on here. This is it. This is how this whole setup looks. It's rather small. But if you want it even smaller, then you can get maybe the 28 f2.8 lens from the Canon RF mount, and it is about this big. Right now, you're looking at the adapter, but if you mount that lens on here, it's going to end up looking about that big. So anyway, this is what the 40 mil essentially looks like. If I were to let's see, dismount the 40 mil, I can put the 50 mil on here. But I would say between all of the lenses, when it comes to photos, I'm usually between this, the 50 mil 1.8, or the Sigma 18 to 35. So these are my top, basically, if you had to pick two lenses, this would be it. Sigma 1835, 51.8. If you wanted to have just two lenses, if you were to add a third lens on top of that, I would say the 14 to 20 if you want a fast ultra wide zoom, or the 11 to 20 if you want versatility. And if you want portability, get yourself a, if you're on full frame, get yourself a 40 mil. If you're on crop sensor, get the 24 mil 2.8. Both are about the same size. R10 is not a bad choice if you definitely need a viewfinder. I'm not big on a viewfinder, and had the R50V been around when this purchase was made, this is not my camera personally. This is actually my colleague and friend's camera, but he's out of town, and so I'm basically borrowing his camera in the time being. However, at the time of the purchase of this camera, if the R50V had been available for purchase, then I would have definitely recommended that he purchase that camera, because most use case for both he and I and the work that we're doing, especially in a space like this, is more than 99% video. At times it's photos, but photos would generally be for behind the scenes kind of stuff. But the R10 is still, like, I like the grip of the R10. So I think, but you still get 8-bit video, if I'm not mistaken. But overall, it was good quality for the most part. But if you're gonna get the R50V or the R8 or R6 Mark II, now you're no longer in a budget situation. So, but I think the R50V is probably the cheapest camera. these are the lenses that I would highly advise and recommend that y'all consider. Again, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. I'll see you soon.